so happy to have you here tonight because this is a special program. We're so honored to have a namesake like Patricia Nixon, because unlike Eleanor Roosevelt, she did everything quietly behind her husband. She was the eyes and ears of Richard Milhouse Nixon, where actually Eleanor Roosevelt did some great things too, and wonderful things that are still lasting, but she did them as an individual. But Pat did them in partnership with her husband. And so tonight we're very honored to have our very own Darlene Skye play the role of Pat Nixon, and she's going to join us in a few minutes. And she will be the one telling us a little bit more about the program. You each should have one of these Let Freedom Ring brochures, and this gives all the facts about Pat Nixon. But tonight's program up here with Darlene and me will be the feelings. We'll talk a little bit about how things happen and how she really felt about them as these things were going on. So it's going to be fun to see how this all goes tonight. So we welcome your participation as well. But please keep those brochures handy so you can remain involved with the facts. Oh my goodness, excuse me, I'm sorry, but we're going to have a program here tonight, and we don't want to be interrupted by anyone. Oh no, I can't believe it, it's Pat Nixon, Pat's back! Oh, Pat. We can have just a few minutes so we can ask you a few questions.
It's a pleasure to be here, Chloe. Thank you for having me.
Well, come right on up down and sit down. We have a special place for you, a place of honor.
I want to thank the Pat Nixon Republican Women Federated for having me here today. It's really such an honor, and also for accepting me as their namesake over the years. They do a tremendous job. So could you please give a warm welcome or great thankfulness to the Pat Nixon Republican Women Federated. Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here. I want to thank each and every one of you. I know all of you are going through some hard times right now, tragedies because of the pandemic, COVID, unemployment, death, and hard times, isolation. And that's why I've come back. I'm 108 years old now, but I knew I had to come back, not to raise my profile for you, not to tell you how great and wonderful my accomplishments or achievements as the First Lady under the 37th President of the United States, but rather for encouragement for each and every one of you to tell you that yes, what you're going through right now, the tough times, the loss of lives, the sickness, the illness, the no jobs, you're going to get through it. You're going to rise yourself up, push the pain away, and onward and upward.
Very good. Please have a seat, Mrs. Nixon. And sometimes you go by Pat, and sometimes you go by Mrs. Nixon. Which do you prefer?
Thank you for asking. It's nice to be here. I would like to say that I was born March 16th, 1912 as Thelma Catherine Ryan, and believe it or not, I was in Ely, Nevada in a miner shaft. My father was a miner, and when he came home the next day, it was St. Patrick's Day, so if we have any Irish people out there, he was so excited, Chloe, to have a little girl. So for all the girls out there, he was just thrilled, so he called me St. Patrick's Babe in the Morn, or his babe, or Pat, and I always liked it, even though my mother named me officially Thelma Catherine Ryan. So when I joined Fullerton Junior College for the first year, I was very excited to officially start off as Patricia Ryan.
Very good. Thank you so much for that information. And I'd like to have you tell us now a little bit about your early childhood and actually your education as well.
After 1 year at Ely, Nevada, my parents thought, gee, now's a good time to leave and go to California. So I was 1 year old when we went to Artesia, California, but you call it Cerritos, California now. He became a farmer, my father. My father, Will, was called the Cabbage King, so he worked on the farm really hard. I still remember when I was little that we had this big truck with 40 crates in it of cabbages, so he did such a good job, working hard. We worked hard on the farm.
Did you help pick those cabbages?
Yes, we picked cabbages, but I remember picking cauliflower, and do you know every bucket of cauliflower I got 4 cents? Times have changed. I worked really hard. My brother, Bill and Tom were really great. I worked hard with them on the farm, and we enjoyed it. It was a family thing. Hard work was a really strong ethic then as far as getting through things.
Yes, and I believe that sadly, later on, your mother had some health problems, and then what happened?
So I guess I would say we went through an epidemic of tuberculosis. You have COVID. We had tuberculosis we went through. Actually, my husband's 2 brothers, Arthur and Harold, died from tuberculosis. Unfortunately, my father passed away from tuberculosis. So that's why I want to share that you can get through pain. I was 13 years old when I lost my mother, Kate, and within 5 years I lost my father, Will, from tuberculosis. My mother died from cancer. But you see, we all stuck together. We worked really hard, and it was a way to get through things then. So even though I kept books in the family, and you would laugh because my 2 brothers, now we were like teenagers, young teenagers, my brothers would help me wash dishes, but they didn't want their football friends to see them washing dishes, and I still remember them like closing the curtains so nobody would see them. And I remember taking a stick to wash the clothes and hang them on the clothesline and still go to school. So when we graduated from high school, Excelsior High School, we were pretty broke.
Well, then actually, how did you afford to go to college? You eventually went to college. I don't understand. How did you earn the money to go to college?
My brothers, Bill and Tom, we got together, the 3 of us, with no parents. We graduated from high school together. I skipped 2nd grade, so that's why the age difference caught up. I love to read. So we made a commitment. We worked together. That's why family and working together during your tough times can make such a difference. So they agreed that they would go to school. So my brother went to college first, and I decided I was going to work. I even got a job at the bank in Los Angeles, and it was tough because my friends would drive by and I'd be on the floor scrubbing mud off the First National Bank in Los Angeles, and I felt really bad. They made fun of me, but that was the work ethic. And then one day there was this ad, and I answered. Some couple by the name of Mr. and Mrs. Beers wanted someone to drive them from Los Angeles to New York, 3,000 miles in a Packard.
Wow.
And Chloe, I went there, and they were pretty shocked to find out that Pat was a female. But I drove that Packard all the way from Los Angeles to New York with no cell phones. I understand you have now, or AAA. I had an old-fashioned map. I changed 2 flat tires. I was barely 20 years old, and made it all the way. I remember even going to the Rockies in the car. The Packard overheated, and I knew to put 2 rocks under the tires so I didn't lose a couple down the Rockies. And we made it to New York, and my gift was, or my payment was a bus ticket back to New York, to Los Angeles.
Well, is that the way you finally entered college? You went to college and you did very well. Tell us a little bit about your education at the university and your experience going into education.
I attended USC. I graduated with honors. Thank you very much. Only 1 out of 10 people, girls, 1 out of 10 girls graduated college in those days, and I was one of them. I did do this stint in New York. I worked in the hospital, and to let you know, the tuberculosis patients, I look back and sometimes I don't know what I was thinking, but because you're going through COVID, I must share with you, at night I would sneak the tuberculosis patients because they wanted to go out and we went sledding, if you could believe it or not. 1937, I graduated and went to Whittier, California, and met the love of my life.
Yes, that's one of the things we've been looking forward to hearing about. How did you meet Richard Nixon, and what happened as a result of that meeting and subsequent activities together?
I was a typing teacher, and you know how young teachers get together? We talked about what was going on. Whittier was a Quaker town. There usually really wasn't any dancing or no alcohol, believe it or not, in that time, but we did talk about a young, very handsome deputy attorney that worked. It was simple chit-chat, if you will, and he must have heard about me, but when there was an audition at church, because we like to get involved in the community, he must have heard about me too, because when we auditioned for the play, he showed up and he said to me, when he met me the very first time, he said, "I'm going to marry you someday."
Wow.
I was kind of shaken aback and touched. I think our love affair was pretty one-sided, but I have to tell you, that's one side of Richard Nixon, called him Dick Nixon, that nobody ever knew. He was very loving and very kind, and within a few years, when he proposed to me overlooking San Clemente, I still remember we had boysenberry ice cream, and we're sitting in the car and in Dana Point, and he said, "Will you marry me?" And I knew I loved him then.
That's very exciting and very interesting, and gosh, it was a relationship that lasted many, many, many years. So tell us, after you were married, what did he do before he actually went into service? Did he stay in the legal field, or did he do something else? What did he do? And then why did he finally go into the Army, or the Navy, I guess it was, because actually he was a Quaker, and this was against his religion. So tell us a little bit about what he did as an attorney, and then how he ended up in the Air Force or the Navy, whatever his military service was.
He was an attorney for a few years, but you know what? He loved his country. Richard Nixon loved the United States of America, and I always knew that he would be president, believe it or not, because of his political aspirations and because he loved his country so much. So we moved to Washington, D.C. from Whittier, California, and he got a job at the Office of Price Administration. And when World War II broke out, my brother Bill and Tom joined, and so did my husband join, even though he was a Quaker and it was a peace-loving religion, and he told his parents, his family, that he felt that was something that he could do. However, eventually, politics was in his blood, and I knew that, and when he was asked to run for the 12th district in California, that's when things started. I had two daughters. We had our two daughters in 46 and 1948. Loved them both. Julie and Tricia are their names, and I still campaigned. So when he was running as a congressman, 6 hours after having a breech delivery, for all those women out there that know what that's like, within 6 hours of having Tricia, I was already doing some campaigning in bed with making brochures and handouts for him to win as congressman of the 12th district.
Interesting. And so when he was a congressman, he got involved in some very interesting activities. What actually brought most attention to Richard Nixon and eventually ended him up in a national position? Tell us about that.
That's a very good question, because as a matter of fact, when you talk about communism and leftism today, and I would like to just interject something really quick so I don't forget, because you talked about communism. That was his big ticket. That's what he was really, really pushing against. And you have all this leftist information that's going on, and wonderful people that are running now. But in 1987, 86, it was in the late 80s, I was watching, and those young people out here in the audience may not have ever heard of the Phil Donahue show. But there was this young, very attractive young man I was watching it on television, and his name was, has anyone heard this name before? Donald Trump. He's on the Phil Donahue show, and I had to quickly tell my husband, I said, "Dick, you have to see this man. He is great. He could be president someday. You must send him a letter." And I think I found out, and please tell me, everyone, I heard President Trump actually has a letter that former President Nixon wrote to him saying that his wife saw him on TV and that he would become very successful if he ran. And here he is as our president.
Very interesting. Now, actually, he had a strong feeling about this communist situation, and there was a big legal issue coming before Congress, and this got Richard Nixon a lot of attention. Tell us a little bit about that Alger Hiss incident.
Whittaker Chambers was a former communist, and he said Alger Hiss was a spy. Do you believe Alger Hiss in those times? We had communism then, and nobody would want to believe it because he was in the high echelon of our government. Nobody wanted to believe my husband, and he fought really hard, and it haunted him the rest of his life because he went after a liberal. It proved that Alger Hiss was lying. That's why he was convicted of perjury and went to jail. However, years later, they proved that Alger Hiss was a communist spy and he was working for our government.
This brought Richard Nixon into the position of being sort of a national figure, because this actually television was coming about. They were getting a lot of information about this. It became quite an issue in Congress and throughout the country, and there were lots of pros and cons about Nixon's position. But it brought him to the attention of somebody who ran for president, and this was who?
Has anyone ever heard of General Eisenhower? Well, General Eisenhower heard about my husband because of his fight against communism and thought he was his man, and asked my husband to run. So my husband Dick ran for congressman twice. He was senator against, he beat Helen Gahagan Douglas. Helen Gahagan Douglas, by the way, was married to Melvin Douglas, who was a movie star in Hollywood. So General Eisenhower said, "You're my man." Long story short, it was the most difficult time in my life, Chloe, because I am a very private person. I want you to know that. And they criticized my husband, and he was ready to drop off the ticket. And we're on the train. And in those days, you didn't have a cell phone. And every time we stopped, people threw things at us. I remember being hit by pennies. They wanted us off the ticket, the liberals. So when you watch television and you hear things on the radio, do your homework, ladies and gentlemen, because it's not the truth. It's not the truth and what they said about my husband. But he wanted to give a speech, and it's one of the most famous speeches in history. It's called the Checkers speech. Does anybody know who Checkers is? Oh, I love you all. Thank you very much. They know that Checkers was our dog, because my husband said to the American people, you send in your telegrams, you send in your letters to the Republican committee, and you tell me if you want Dick Nixon off the ticket, because I will get off. My husband said everything about our personal life. He even told them what kind of coat I would wear. I was so mortified, Chloe. And he said, I'm not going to give this one thing back. I don't care what you said. I didn't take any fund. They were saying bad things. I think President Trump is going through the same thing right now. They said that Richard Nixon took $18,000 that didn't belong to him. So our whole federal income tax, you name it, was out in the public. I was mortified. Long story short, thousands and thousands of telegrams and calls went into the Republican National. Does this sound familiar for today, ladies and gentlemen? Your vote counts. Your vote counts. I just have to say, please vote. I don't care what state or what city or where you're from. There was voter fraud story in Chicago when he ran for president, but those telegrams came in, those letters came in and said, Richard Nixon, you're our man, please run. And he became Vice President of the United States.
Very interesting. Yay! Win again. And how were those years? What is one of your best memories from the years when you were vice president? We're going to have to move a little along here, but to tell us your favorite or your most happy times as a vice president president's wife.
Second lady, I hope you know that there is no directions really on what to do. So I'm a big proponent, and we were assigned as being ambassadors of the United States of America. I went to 80 countries. Onward and upward, ladies and gentlemen. Onward and upward for each and every one of you when times are tough. Because we went to Caracas, and they're communists in Caracas at that time, and our lives, it was Morte Nixon, we didn't really understand. My whole dress was full of tobacco stains on our trip. When we went to South America, they spit at me, they yelled at me. It was a horrible time. We thought our lives were in danger of what we got through. I always believe that people know that you have love in your heart. So we got through that okay, but that's one example in traveling as a vice president, being ambassadors of the United States of America.
Yes, thank you. There were so many ups and downs during those Eisenhower years, but you did do well, and you did well by your husband. And you actually stood in the background, but you were always there. You were his eyes and ears, and I know that you were a great contributor toward his success. Now, you had those Eisenhower years, and then President Eisenhower didn't run, but Richard Nixon did, and he ran against a very popular, wealthy young man by the name of
Mr. Kennedy. The tight race it was. So that's why your vote is very important. In 1960, it was probably the most difficult time in my life. The 2 minutes that my husband conceded the vote, and he was standing up there and he said, you know what, Mr. Kennedy is going to be the president, it looks like. I confess to you, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, I didn't believe it. I told him not to do it. I told him to wait. Your vote is important. Please vote. Because yes, years after that, they found out there was voter fraud. Sound interesting for today? Ladies and gentlemen, voter fraud was in Chicago years later. Years later, they found out that dead people voted in Chicago and in Texas. So it's interesting. So don't forget the importance of voting.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You know, then you came back to California, and what happened when you were here? What transpired during those years to cause him to go back and run again?
So my husband depressed. Politics was in his blood, and I knew that he wanted to run. He was the happiest when he ran. He ran for the governor of California. He lost. So ladies and gentlemen, remember the onward and upward. If you're down and you're out, push the pain away and you keep going. He may be the only president who lost in a presidency in 60 and then became president in 1969. He called it the wilderness years, onward and upward. He wrote his first book, Sixth Crisis at the time, but he campaigned for Goldwater, so he still was involved, so it was in his blood. And he was so happy when he announced he was going to run for president for 1969.
That was an exciting election as well. And what actually was the highlight of that whole time when he was actually running for president once again? He was a different figure this time, wasn't he? Because he had both pros and cons. He had tremendous backing, but he also had those who were out to get him. So tell us what was going on in his mind and in your home during that very exciting time.
As you're fighting a war right now with COVID, we were fighting a war in Vietnam that time, and it was difficult. So just imagine, because I know you're all too young to know what the Vietnam War was like, but it was horrible because it's the very first time, I'll repeat that, it's the very first time in the history of the world or the country that we watched a war on television. So it really brought the brutality, the horror, kind of what you're seeing today with COVID and all the stuff that's going on. So we had the Vietnam War in our living room. And for my husband to see those things and to know, and he wrote on that ticket that when he won that night, I didn't believe it. I said, honey, really, is this the truth? I didn't sleep all night. I had the biggest stomach ache. And when he told me, yes it is, it was the most amazing triumph, onward and upward.
And then you had 4 wonderful years as president, and you did a lot of great things as first lady. And actually, in this little brochure that I'm sure everybody will check out, there's a list of tons of things that you did as a first lady that never had happened before and haven't happened in a lot of cases since. So you were very, very active, and those were happy years. And then you come into your second term. In fact, he won his second term by how much? That was the exciting part.
It was a very close race. Chloe is a heartbreaker as usual, but we still continued on. And I again want to say that I'm not here to raise my profile, but to really give you encouragement as First Lady. At the White House, I illuminated the White House at night. I illuminated the flag at night. I was the first First Lady, don't laugh, to wear pants in the White House. Right. I was ambassador. I went to Africa on my own. I was initiated by the presidency to go as an ambassador to Africa. I went to Ghana, Liberia. I went to the Ivory Coast by myself and represented the people of the United States of America. I danced with President Tolbert in Liberia, which was really unusual, and I put on this beautiful African garb and the headdress, and I was so proud because I always believed that people, reaching out to people makes such a difference. Even the tours at the White House, I was the first lady to initiate tours for the blind. Handicap ramps were never in the White House, but I put them there. I made sure that they were there, and even brochures in all languages, so if you came to the White House, you could go on a tour and still understand. Also, interesting enough, we had the people who, if anyone likes to have parties, we had the largest party ever at the White House under President Nixon's presidency. 54,000 people. Even more than that, I want to say over 45,000 people was the most ever that ever went through the White House, because we always believed that the White House was your house, each and every one of you, so we opened it up. Every Sunday we had religious denomination of every sort in the East Room so people can enjoy the White House.
That first term was just so successful that by the time the second term came along, it was true that he won by every state except 2 in the Union. So that was a thrilling election. And then things turned sour toward the second and third year. What happened that actually caused this difficult time? We don't want to dwell on it, but as a wife, how did you deal with that?
It was tough. It's probably one of the most difficult times in my life. I mean, you're speaking about Watergate in 1972, ladies and gentlemen. Tough time. It was a tough time being a mother, a wife, a first lady. And that's why I bring to what's going on for you today. I don't know what each and every one of you are going through and how isolated you feel. And maybe you don't even feel like getting up in the morning. But Watergate, the deception, the lies, the deceits on television. I couldn't watch television anymore. I couldn't even read a newspaper. Take walks at night wearing the sunglasses as you see today. When I talked to the media, they would distort what even I would say if I didn't say enough or I said too much. Sometimes I told my dearest friend Helen Droyne that I pretended I didn't hear the newsmen when they put a mic in front of my face, and I said, watch, they're going to say I'm deaf now. That's how tough it was. But the onward and upward, the diligence, it pushed the pain away. And my husband, to have to go through those political shenanigans, similar to what you're going through today. That's why history is so important, and you hear about the statues and all these things going down. History is such an important learning factor.
Such an important point, but you came through it fine. And what happened on that night that you left the White House after he said goodbye, his farewell? Tell us a little bit about that feeling, because this program is all about the feelings you had, and we're about to end our program, but actually I want you to tell us a little bit about the feeling that night and what happened as you left the White House.
August 8th, when I found out, my husband had Rose Wood's secretary come and inform me, because I knew it was too tough, that we were leaving. I started packing at night. I didn't sleep all night, so you can imagine being in the White House, and that we were going to get a televised presentation in the East Room. August 9th, 1974 was the most difficult time when we left the White House. We were flying over Missouri, 12 noon. At 12 noon, I was no longer First Lady.
Thank you so much. But you came back to California, you lived a good life here, and you honored this husband. And I'd like to say now, as we're closing, Pat, that you were a wonderful wife, a devoted wife, and tell us about that wonderful husband you had. What made him so special? Your relationship so special?
The media never really announced that, so you don't know, but he wrote such wonderful love letters. President Nixon has a very romantic side that you probably didn't know about.
Dearest heart, as I look out the window at the clouds with the sun trying to break through, I am thinking of how much you meant to me these past 2 years. Do you remember that funny guy who asked you to go to a 2030 ladies' night just about 2 years ago? Well, you know that though he still may be funny, he's changed since then. But you may not know, dear one, that he gets the same thrill when you say you'll go someplace with him as he did that time when you said that he can take you for a ride in his car. And did you know that he still looks out the window toward wherever you are and sends you the best he has in love, admiration, respect, and best of luck? And the winds blow, and the rains fall, and the sun shines through the clouds as it is now. He still resolves, as he did then, that nothing so fine ever happened to him or anyone else as falling in love with thee, my dearest heart.